Clarence Mitchell, when did you start working for Cambridge Analytica?
I was approached to consider working for the company, on behalf of the company, at the tail end of the week before last. I have spent the last few days immersing myself in the situation and the company's responses to it. I have found a very committed, young, vibrant, intelligent team who are, in the whole, have been appalled by some of the allegations, the misinformation and the misunderstanding of what the company does, indeed the misunderstanding of data analytics in general, and how it can be used perfectly legitimately to assist clients, either commercial clients for marketing purposes or, yes, political clients for campaigning purposes.
Given the size of this scandal, though, the biggest data privacy scandal probably in history, one of the most lurid, ugly corporate scandals in the UK, do you think it's appropriate that they brought in you, a hired gun, an outside consultant, to clean the mess up for them, rather than wheeling one of the executives out there to do the talking themselves?
The executives out there, as you put it, are working very hard to make sure that the company gets through this. They have been explaining to their existing clients the truth of the situation, how many of the headlines around this have been either willful distortions, frankly some with an overtly political agenda behind them, or simple misunderstandings that have led to a firestorm of speculation, conspiracy theory, you name it.
But what better way to do that than to appear on the channel that broke the majority of the news? If they want to get that message out, why isn't Mr. Wheatland sitting in front of me now, or Mr. Nix himself?
Well, what better way for us?
You don't work for the company.
What? I am working for the company.
But you're not Cambridge Analytica. You weren't there for any of the scandal. You weren't involved in any of it. You know what you know from the last week. You probably know less about it than many people in my office.
Rest assured, I know a lot about it, and that is why I'm perfectly proud to be able to sit in front of you and defend the company and try to begin to redress the balance where appropriate and to get the truth of some of what's happened out there, rather than having people just accept the headlines for what they appear to be. You say, why don't they speak to Channel 4? I'm speaking to Channel 4 to you now. Some companies would have said, we're certainly not talking to Channel 4. They are part of the problem with your expose of Mr. Nix's comments.
We're not part of the problem. That was just exposing.
If you let me finish.
The nature of what happens here.
No, that is entirely not the nature of what happens here.
Mr. Nix runs the business.
Siobhan, let me finish. That statement in itself, the nature of what happens here, is full of assumption about it's a normal practice. That Mr.
Two of your most senior executives, the chief executive.
Let me finish, and I'll explain. Nobody is defending what Mr. Nix said, and he has paid the price for that. He is currently suspended, as you well know. The point is, that was one of 4 meetings. The conversation by a made-up client had been led down. He had been led down that path. Now, what he said by going down that path was entirely unacceptable. It is not a reflection of what happens here, as you put it. The staff here...
Well, he wasn't a minor bit player, is all I mean.
Please let me finish. The staff here were utterly horrified by what was said, and they did not recognise the company, its culture, its ethical underpinning, or the work that they do, nor would any of them for a moment countenance any activity like that. Mr. Nix's comments were overzealous salesmanship at worst, and he shouldn't have said what he said, not denying that. And Channel 4, from a journalistic point of view, did a good job in exposing that nonsense. However, as I say, it does not reflect the culture of the company. I know that from the work I've already done with them in the last few days. And as a result, there is an internal investigation ongoing, led by a QC, and his comments in that piece and all of the other print coverage around the Kogan data and everything else that we've been discussing will be addressed in all of that, and we'll make that public at the appropriate time.
Just to get back to my question, though, your answer as to why Mr. Nix or Mr. Wheatland isn't sitting in front of me now is that Channel 4 News is part of the problem that we are trying to address to our clients. And I'm saying to you, shouldn't they be addressing it on that chair there rather than you,
Mr. Nix,
a stooge, doing their dirty work for them?
Well, It's kind of you to say I'm a stooge. I'm certainly not a stooge. I'm here to represent the company in the media focus, given my own professional background and experience. None of the staff here have anything like that degree of experience. Mr. Nix would have been the appropriate person to speak to you. Yes, fully agree. But he's not able to at the moment because of his suspension. So in the absence of that,
You've got another chief executive.
Mr. Nix is the currently suspended CEO. There is no CEO other than him in his suspended role at present. The other senior management here are all working hard in their respective areas, dealing with clients, dealing with the staff, and making sure Cambridge Analytica survives this. It has absolutely every reason to survive it. It's a good company doing a good job for its clients around the world.
But you understand, to the viewer here, 6 weeks on from this scandal breaking, Cambridge Analytica finally speaks out, and it's not somebody from Cambridge Analytica. Yet there is an executive out there in charge. Mark Turnbull is still here. Why? I'm still not clear why neither of them can spend this half an hour with me now and then get back to the important business that I understand you are telling me they have to do.
They are subject to not only the internal investigation that's been conducted by the QC, but also assisting the ICO investigation, the Electoral Commission, and frankly, our doors are open to any investigation of the allegations that have been made, and Cambridge Analytica is more than happy to continue to work with those investigators. But dealing with, in the public forum, with the media, the company felt needed someone with a degree of experience. And
you haven't got any experience here. Isn't that the point?
Mr. Nix, the senior management see rightly their priority is to keep the company on track and get it through this.
But isn't partly that dealing with the media, getting the message out there, being contrite on camera and talking about the scandal and trying to make amends publicly, not getting an outside PR consultant to do it for them who wasn't there, who doesn't work for the company, with respect to you?
Siobhan, I'm here now. The company has opened its doors to you. You are in the Cambridge Analytica offices. Many companies under these circumstances wouldn't have welcomed you in. I'm here now. I have been fully briefed on the company's position, what happened, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on their behalf.
You said yesterday that staff, you've repeated it today, were shocked, outraged at what they saw.
They were horrified. Yes.
They were horrified. Now, Mr. Turnbull was also in that same footage, saying such things like Cambridge Analytica hires corporate intelligence organisations to discover their opponents' secrets, and that the company puts stuff, I quote, into the bloodstream of the internet so it is unattributable, untrackable.
Mr. Turnbull also said
were staff not just as shocked at this type of things that he was saying?
I said the staff were horrified by the sort of comments that were made in your recordings.
So why has he not been suspended then? Why is he still here working?
That is an internal management decision, and that is not for me to comment on. Anything to do with essentially personnel and employment matters is one for the investigation to get to the bottom of, and for management to decide upon. Mr. Turnbull as well, to be fair, you've quoted the negativity there. In your own piece, he also said that Cambridge Analytica is not in the business of fake news. It's not the sort of thing they want to do.
Yeah, but these are pretty lurid practices that he was alluding to, happily saying it's what his company does.
I come back to you that both Mr. Nix and Mr. Turnbull were at worst guilty of overzealous salesmanship. They were entered into a hypothetical discussion which was begun and led by your own fake client, let's face it, fake client, to entrap them. Now, they shouldn't have said what they said. I'm not defending that. Mr. Nix's comments were overzealous salesmanship.
So you can say that the company's never done that?
The company's
never ever used those forms of honey traps. Why was he saying that it has done then? It's
because he was exaggerating for the sake of winning a potentially important Sri Lankan client. And what he said was wrong.
So you can categorically say the company, Cambridge Analytica, has never used that type of honey trap?
Absolutely.
Ever?
Cambridge Analytica has not done that.
Ever?
Cambridge Analytica has not done that. And for Mr. Nix to suggest it in the way that he did was wrong. And absolutely.
Mr. Turnbull didn't jump in and say, we've never done this in the past. We're just giving you this as an example.
The comments in your piece were wrong, and were factually incorrect in every shape or form. The company does not, and the staff here do not recognise it. They've never done that, nor would they ever do that if it were ever to be suggested.
You said that all of this will be covered in the independent investigation. Just to be clear, who is paying the QC for that independent investigation?
He will be paid through his own normal channels, and his fees will be met by...
What are the own normal channels?
Ultimately, he will be paid...
By Cambridge Analytica?
By SCL, by the group. But the point is...
How can it possibly be an independent investigation
because
if you're paying...
QC. You are potentially impugning his reputation as a senior lawyer, that he will somehow write a report because he's been paid to do it.
You know, as a senior PR consultant, that whenever a company is in the storm that this company is in,
yes,
that an independent investigation does not constitute that very same company hand-picking and paying the QC to do the investigation. Surely that compromises him. You would say that, wouldn't you, if you were wearing a different hat and doing PR against a company that was alleging that this investigation was independent?
I understand the point you're making. In this case, it is actually perilously close to impugning the independence.
I don't even know his name. How can I be impugning him?
Well, because his name will become clear if the report and when the report is released.
Anybody out there on the street, if you were to go and say, do you think it's independent? Do you think it's right and proper that Cambridge Analytica...
Cambridge Analytica have done the right thing by bringing in a QC to examine the allegations being made against them. He will have complete freedom to talk to whoever he wants, to ask whatever questions he wants, and his own good name as a senior lawyer will be attached to that report.
Can we have a guarantee from you, Mr. Mitchell, that the QC, that the company will publish in full the report and the evidence that was uncovered by the QC in full for all to see when it's concluded?
I have said consistently, as I said yesterday, that when the report is complete and both the QC and the board are in a position to release the details, they will be doing so.
And all the evidence, just to clarify.
I said the details, whatever the report contains, will be released.
But that's important. It may seem like
the report is still underway.
It's not the details of the report; it's the evidence that he used to make his conclusions. Will everything be open?
For it to be a thorough and independent report, sources obviously will form a part of that. But I cannot prejudge what he or exactly how he's going to release, or the board. The board will take that decision when he's completed and presented to them.
Moving on to the other big issue here, the Facebook data.
Yes.
We got ourselves in a bit of a twist yesterday, as I saw it. You were saying that the company relied entirely on Dr. Kogan and his reassurance to you that the consent had been received.
Duly obtained. Yeah.
Duly obtained. And that is what exonerates Cambridge Analytica from the whole Facebook scandal. Now, his argument, and Chris Wiley has said that Cambridge Analytica, that he approached Dr. Kogan, and that Cambridge Analytica, the actual company, was set up entirely with a view to harvesting the Facebook data. That is what the company was all about.
Sorry, GSR or Cambridge Analytica?
Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica, yes, GSR also, but Cambridge Analytica...
Chris Wiley has presented himself as somehow a founder or instrumental in the creation of Cambridge Analytica.
So you're denying that?
Yes, categorically.
So Cambridge Analytica had a full life and existence ahead of him approaching Dr. Kogan
Cambridge Analytica
to harvest the Facebook data. When was it set up then, and what was its purpose?
Cambridge Analytica has been in existence since 2013. It's a young company within the SCL, the wider SCL universe, if you like. But Chris Wiley categorically was not a founder. He was a part-time contractor. I've even heard him described almost as an intern. He did 2 days a week.
He's not saying he was a founder. He's saying that the company was set up primarily with a view of harvesting the Facebook data, that he was the one who approached Dr. Kogan. I don't think that's in dispute. Dr. Kogan said that yesterday in front of a parliamentary committee.
Dr. Kogan also said on the record in front of Parliament yesterday that he began to realise that Mr. Wiley was not the most reliable person in the world, and accused him of acting duplicitously.
And that was to do with the exchange of data.
But those go to his characteristics. So I don't know why you're presenting his version as absolute fact, as if we have to answer.
I'm asking you a question. Yeah, you're saying it's not true.
I'm saying
Cambridge
it's not
Analytica
true.
was not set up with
Cambridge
any view to harvesting the Facebook data. It existed beforehand.
Absolutely not. Cambridge Analytica was an entity focused on the US market, as it always has been. It does not hold any UK data.
What was it doing in the US then before this huge harvesting of Facebook data? How much work had it done?
It had worked on the Ted Cruz campaign. It had worked on the midterm 24.
No, it hadn't, because it used that Facebook data to do the Ted Cruz campaign.
The
Facebook data had not even been harvested by then.
The Facebook data was first tested, having received it on the basis that it was legitimate and was able to be worked on. It was first used in the midterm elections, 2014, on a small scale. It was then tested further, sample tested, for in the Cruz presidential bid, and it was that testing that led it to be revealed as virtually useless, in terms of it only being statistically just above a random guess on the personality of a voter model set. And as a result, its usage was abandoned, and Cambridge went back to more traditional modelling and publicly available sources, which it then used in the Trump campaign. The profiling, the personality profiling, wasn't used in the Trump campaign, and nor was the GSR data, because it had been discounted.
I know that. Slightly different question though, but the point is you're denying. You're saying that Cambridge Analytica was surviving and had a business before the Facebook data was harvested, and yet when I say what did it do, you said it did the Ted Cruz campaign, it did all these other things. All those things were reliant upon the Facebook data. Cambridge Analytica's formation was all about tapping into the political sphere in the US off the back of the Facebook data.
If that's the case, why are the bulk of Cambridge Analytica's clients commercial clients in other parts of the world?
Well, they might be now. We're talking about then.
The point is, Mr. Wiley's comments are made with his own motivations behind them. We've all seen the way this has developed, and Cambridge Analytica was set up to penetrate the US market on the political side. And
with this massive cache of data. You might discredit him, but he's not lying about this. Facebook has said, actually, yes, that's correct. Millions upon millions of user data were harvested. So you may think what you like about Mr. Wiley, but his central whistleblowing element of his story is that
a whistleblower has a genuine grievance. Mr. Wiley is not a whistleblower in the traditional sense. No, but again, that's an example of how the media has latched onto the terms and given this impression falsely all around the world.
It's irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant.
It is, because he has disclosed something which is true.
This is a man who set up his own company after leaving Cambridge Analytica, a rival concern with far more of that data than Cambridge Analytica ever had, on a much broader basis, which is what Dr. Kogan said yesterday. And as a result, Mr. Wiley, pitched his company, Unoya, to both the Trump campaign and Vote Leave, and failed to win that work. So there is a commercial aspect, a motivation that you can point to just as easily.
But his central claim about the harvesting of data by this company is not wrong.
This company,
whatever he did,
Cambridge Analytica, did not harvest the data. The collection of the data was done by GSR and Dr. Kogan, and that
commissioned by this company, by Mr. Wiley.
That in itself was a model
Mr. Nix himself pushed hard for Mr. Kogan to harvest as much data as possible. Let me read something to you, Mr. Mitchell. We've seen an email from Mr. Nix on September the 17th, 2014, in which he tells the team, Mr. Kogan's team, to harvest the rest of the USA before the Facebook rules change in December. Mr. Nix was pushing this harvesting, as was Mr. Wiley. You can't now stand back and say, oh, it was all Dr. Kogan, we just believed what he said. You commissioned him to do it, didn't you?
For a start, Mr. Nix was, in that email, is asking for them to conduct activity. So it proves that Cambridge Analytica was not doing the harvesting, which is what we've always said.
But it proves that he commissioned the harvesting and was pushing it forward.
Again,
Kogan was just the one doing the modelling and the programming. You know that that's true.
Dr. Kogan had the bulk of the data. We received something like 30 million data on 30 million people, not the 50 or the 87 million that has been claimed.
Well, let's just clear that up, shall we?
Mr. Wiley got far more on a broader basis.
Fine, but let's just clear that up, this 30 million. Facebook says 87 million. Now, Facebook is the company. Are you saying that they're lying?
No, we're not saying that. But the figure for the material that was received, the data that was received here, was in the region of 26 to 30 million.
Just 30 million users data harvested without their knowledge.
I'm not minimising it. The figures here are mind-boggling. We know that. It's hard for anyone to begin to get your head around that sheer level of statistic. Once Facebook complained at the end of 2015 that they felt their terms of service had been breached by Dr. Kogan, and by extension the data was therefore a breach of terms of service, we, Cambridge Analytica, did all we could immediately to rectify that by beginning to delete the raw data, as Facebook had asked, and then working on it for further months to make sure any derivatives and copies were also removed, and then presented Facebook with a certificate to that effect sometime later.
Okay, just on the deletion, so can you guarantee that the data, all the instances and derivatives of the data have been deleted?
I can guarantee that everything has gone from the systems as should have been expunged. There will, of course, there is an ongoing ICO investigation. They are physically examining the computers as we speak, so we're happy to assist them. If there is somewhere the merest trace of it, we will also bring in an independent data analyst to do an audit.
Okay, because 4 weeks ago, Channel 4 News revealed in another story personality profiles of 130,000 residents in Colorado based on that Facebook data. So we were able to obtain that data years after you were supposed to have deleted it.
But you're implying that we were the only ones who had that data. It was a non-exclusive contract. Dr. Kogan was selling it to others. He himself confirmed yesterday that others, including Unoya, Mr. Wiley's company, had even more of it. So I don't know, I can't answer the particular point about that particular number of people in Colorado, but Cambridge Analytica is absolutely satisfied that all of the data and the relevant copies, derivatives, have been expunged from its systems.
Were this to be yours, and we believe it was, you admit that it's still out there years after it should have been deleted.
This is the point of doing data audits. Data can find its way out there, as you know, and with all of the work that has been done here was done sufficiently well to be able to issue Facebook with a definitive certificate to say it had been done so, and that satisfied Facebook at the time. Given the ongoing...
What time was that? What date was that you finally confirmed that they deleted it?
That was I don't know the exact date, but it was certainly a year or so later, maybe even longer. Facebook came back...
A year or so later from what? What year are we in?
Well, Facebook raised concerns at the end of 2015, and I believe they came back at some point in 2017, last year, just to double confirm.
They told you to delete it when, is what I'm asking?
The moment that they raised the concern, so end of 2015. And the work to do that began immediately. It took time, but it was done, and then the derivatives and everything else.
Okay, so in the middle of that, when you were told to delete it in December 2015, you were in the height of the Ted Cruz campaign, which you've just clarified a couple of minutes ago. The Facebook data was used for. There was
some sample testing done in the early stage, and that's
he's admitted that the data was used for his campaign.
Yeah, well,
we know it. That is an undisputed fact.
But it was the usage,
saga.
it was the usage in that and the testing in it that proved it wasn't, in simple terms, value for money.
Fine, that's different though. The point is, it was being used. The Iowa caucus we know is on the 1st of February. This was a campaign based on that Facebook data. Are you saying that it
was a part of his campaign?
But it clearly hadn't been deleted, because that campaign, that caucus, occurred after you were told to delete the data. Unless you're saying he deleted it all in the middle of his campaign.
The deletions began as soon as practically possible, and they were completed as quickly as possible. It's not just a case of pressing one button and it's gone. It takes time to search the systems and to make sure.
Was it used in that Ted Cruz campaign after the point of being told to delete it? That's all I'm asking.
I cannot give you the exact date, and also Ted Cruz's campaign used other more traditional forms of modelling as well.
That's as may be.
Yeah, but you're implying that his whole campaign ran forward purely on the GSR data.
No, I'm not. I'm saying his campaign used that data. That is not
yes,
in dispute.
They did in the early stages, and the modelling and the testing that was done proved that it was so useless in real terms that it wasn't used any further. And his campaign ran forward on more traditional methods of personality profiling and publicly available data.
Well, maybe you can clarify to us if it was.
I can get back on the exact dates for you as best I can, and we'll do that. So yes.
Okay. On the Trump campaign, you talked about that yesterday.
Yes.
Just repeat for us the categoric, as you said, denial
Yes.
that any of the Facebook data, the 87 million or the 30 million harvested users, none of that data, Mr. Mitchell, was used.
The GSR data at issue was not used in the Donald Trump campaign by Cambridge Analytica, categorically, because by that point its validity, its effectiveness, its utility had been seen for what it was, which was of no real use at all.
So the models, the modelling, the methodology, none of it
everything
was
that
used.
was Cambridge Analytica is actually proud of its work on the Trump campaign. They only had 5 months to do it, unlike previous major digital campaigns for the Obama campaign, the Clinton campaign, who normally have 18 months, perhaps 2 years to work on their data. The Trump campaign solely worked on data from the Republican National Committee, publicly available voter registry data, and other commercially available digital companies that offer access to publicly available databases. And as a result, that's why I can be categorical about the GSR data not being used on the Donald Trump campaign. But the company, Cambridge Analytica, was proud to work on the Trump campaign with those more traditional, and they'd also moved away from the idea of personality modelling so much by then, and had gone on to more traditional models, which were actually proving to be far more effective.
I've just got a couple of other questions I wanted to check to you about elections in other countries, if I may, where a lot of our undercover footage, there was discussion about.
You can, but I'll have to come back to the central point of response, that it's part of the investigation. I won't discuss
all of it? So the Kenyan election.
Kenya, Nigeria, it's all forms part of the.
So you can't answer anything about unattributable material in the Kenyan election?
I'm not going to.
Were you behind unattributable material in the Czech elections?
It's not that I'm not going to talk about it. I simply can't discuss it while the independent investigation is being conducted.
What about your involvement in the Nigerian elections and those pretty gruesome videos that we saw?
I simply can't discuss the details of this. It's all subject to the ongoing investigations, and it would be wrong for me to prejudge it or to get it into the details of it.
Does Cambridge Analytica use proxy organisations as part of its political smearing campaigns?
No. On some of these large campaigns, it's commonplace, particularly in the modern era, for many vendors, for many companies to be supporting campaigns, and where illegitimate material like that has been distributed, that is entirely the sort of thing that Cambridge Analytica would not be doing, and where there has been evidence of it in the past, I understand in general terms that has normally been by other contractors on the same campaigns. But it's
what about using hackers or hacked information?
What about it?
Well, has Cambridge Analytica ever done that?
No, everything it's
categorically no.
Categorically, it takes its data responsibilities very seriously.
So it's never used hackers or hacked information.
It always adheres to the relevant data protection laws in whichever territory it's operating in, as it did, as it believed it was doing with the disputed COVID data.
And no bribes ever given?
As I've said, anything that is relevant to other territories where the allegations of a serious nature have been made, we take them very seriously. They will be investigated, they are being investigated, and the findings of that
all the allegations about political smearing, about hacking, about entrapment, about bribes, all those things you acknowledge are part of the investigation.
Correct, absolutely. Oh yeah, no. This again, you may feel this is me trying to hide behind that. It's not. where,
it's
let me state categorically, where allegations of serious wrongdoing or unethical behaviour.
all of those types of
If you
behaviours.
let me finish the answer, Siobhan. Where allegations of wrongdoing or unethical behaviour have been made in any territory, Cambridge Analytica takes those extremely seriously, and as a result, they have immediately been referred to the QC, who is conducting the independent investigation I've been referring to. The findings of that will be released when he and the board have assessed them and are in a position to do so.